And we're back with part 2 of Mr. Bones. So what happens to the father when he puts on the black face? And you saw the pictures, you saw the video. It was thick black makeup, and you can't tell who's behind it. Why? It changes him, right? And this happens when we don masks, whether literally, figuratively. This is makeup, which is very similar to a mask, and the hat and the whole outfit he would have worn. But when we can become someone else, oftentimes something inside of us busts through, right? Maybe some of you have been in plays in school, and you play the part of someone else. It's fantastic, right? It's fantastic. And in some ways, a real part of you comes out when you're playing someone else. And what we see with Dad here is this repressed, closed man swings in the opposite direction. He becomes this loud, over the top person that they don't recognize, but it was in there, right? It was in there. He comes home from the minstrel show and he is revved up, hepped up, and it is something, this taps into something that is very deep and repressed in him. And it's scary, right? He goes from being this mousy, meek man to these telling really stupid jokes, which, by the way, these really stupid jokes are accurate to minstrel shows. And they're really bad. They're really, really bad. The 1950s minstrel shows really going way back. And he tells these terrible jokes in character. He's rude to the mother. He became a different man, and it had happened quickly, just like that, which means it was in there. This was not an evolution. Once he mastered the song, he kept humming it. I was used to my father's singing, but not these songs. Used to his good humor, but there was anger in these jokes. Anger. Who's he angry at? And I don't say the mom. That's not that simple. I think he's angry at his plight. He's angry at life. About probably a little bit at the mom, but he's resentful that he's in this sort of box where he just works, and his only outlet is singing, and he's not close to his children, which is very sad. And yeah, I'm cutting him some slack here. I am sympathetic toward him. If you want to say, dude, you have 4 kids and a wife, pay attention, connect with them, go ahead. If you want to say he's made bad choices, the way he goes about interacting with his family, feel free, right? That is a case you can make. I think the bottom line is, if you're making that case and I'm more sympathetic and you're less sympathetic toward him, I think we can both agree this is no way to live, and you want to make some changes. You want to make some changes. So Dad has this new identity. He's become a different man, and he's calling them names. And then when you really see him is this one song, which really, so he has this, he gets to this one song in particular, and it's a song he identifies with. It is really his song, and it's a song from the minstrel show, but it's when life seems full of clouds and rain, and I'm full of nothing but pain, who soothes my thumping, bumping brain? Nobody. When all day long things go amiss, and I go home to find some bliss, who hands me a glowing kiss? Nobody. So he's singing his own blues here, right from the minstrel show. Here's a little piece on his humor. There was something abrupt and deflecting in his humor. Whenever he made a joke, he seemed to expand, pushing the house and his job aside. Mother appeared to be afraid of him now. Before, she'd always made a remark or nagged or blamed. These days, she just became very quiet and watched him. Floyd was on the basketball team. Fred played hockey. So they were out most evenings at practice, they said. Get that? They said, sort of implying maybe they weren't at practice, they were just trying to keep out of this stress-filled house. I knew it was just an excuse to stay away from home and Mr. Bones. Rose was a little kid of 7 and she actually found him funny and let him tickle her, but I had nowhere to go. Mr. Bones was a stranger to me, and for the first time lying in bed at night, I began to think, who are you? What do you want? So there is a little bit of the real father is coming out in Mr. Bones. Probably more than the father was before he was Mr. Bones and after, it turns out. And the kid does not recognize him. He doesn't know what's going on. It's very hard. How old is this kid? Like 12 or something? It's really hard for him to process this, right? The older boys are like, yeah, we're out of here. And the little girl thinks it's funny because she's not really old enough to be, to really kind of see how weird it is. She's just going with it. She's just going with it. And then there's this he comes in at night in blackface and looks down at our narrator sleeping. His whole face sticky black, turns the light on, and it's really weird. And it's almost like the father is going through this identity quest and looking at the son and thinking about himself. And even when he washes his face, he still has black in the creases of his face. So he's sort of, the two characters are blending. Okay, so we'll wrap up part 2 here, and we'll move on to part 3.